All right, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling a question that I think has been around like forever. That whole village life versus city life thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it's one of those classic debates, isn't it?
It really is. And what's kind of funny is our jumping off point today. Get this, it's an English language learning video.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's not what I was expecting. Where'd you find this one?
YouTube, actually. It's called, hang on, I've got it right here. Learn English with Podcast Conversation, Episode 1. This is something like that. But the creator is Speak English Smartly, so, they're getting right to the point.
Well, that's promising. I'm curious, though, what does English language learning have to do with village versus city?
So it's a conversation between these two people, and they're, practicing their English by talking about where they'd rather live. But they get into some really universal themes, like what do we actually want from the place we call home?
I see. So even though it's for language learners, the topic itself is something we can all relate to.
Exactly. And they don't shy away from the nitty-gritty either. They go through the pros and cons of each lifestyle, which I have to say sparks some pretty interesting thoughts for me.
Okay, I am officially intrigued. Lay it on me. What did they highlight as the big advantages of village life?
Well, right off the bat, they talk about peace and quiet, which honestly, who doesn't crave a little more of that these days?
True that. That's definitely a big one.
And being closer to nature, fresh air, trees, starry skies, all that good stuff.
Ah, yes. It's like hitting the reset button on life, isn't it? Just getting away from the hustle and bustle.
It totally is. But they also talked about the people. You know how in villages people are often more friendly and helpful. Like there's that real sense of community where everyone knows your name.
It's that old-fashioned feeling of belonging, right? Looking out for your neighbor and knowing they've got your back.
Exactly. It paints a pretty idyllic picture, I have to say.
It does. But like any good debate, there's got to be another side to this coin. What do they say about the downsides of village life?
Right. So this is where things get a bit more, well, realistic. They pointed out that villages often have limited facilities. Fewer shops, maybe not as many job opportunities.
That makes sense. It's a trade-off, I suppose. You gain the peace and quiet, but maybe you lose out on some of the conveniences and opportunities.
And they also talked about maybe not as much going on in terms of entertainment and culture.
Yeah, I can see how that might be a deal breaker for some people, especially if they're used to that constant buzz of activity.
It makes you think, at what point does peaceful tranquility turn into, well, boredom?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it probably depends a lot on your personality and what you're looking for in life.
totally. Okay, so that's village life in a nutshell. Ready to hear about the city slicker side of things?
Hit me with it.
All right, so as soon as they start talking about city life, the video just explodes with like energy, skyscrapers, bustling streets, that feeling of endless possibilities.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's that electric atmosphere that just pulls you in like anything could happen.
Exactly. And the speakers really emphasize the sheer variety of experiences you can have in a city. They mentioned museums, concerts, theaters. It's like a nonstop cultural buffet.
And the food scene, oh man, don't even get me started. You can literally eat your way around the world without ever leaving the city limits.
It's true. Okay, so according to our English learners, what's the biggest draw of city living? You ready for this? Opportunity.
It makes sense. Cities are like these giant magnets for ambition.
They are. They mentioned diverse job markets, tons of educational institutions, all sorts of ways to learn and grow. It's like a giant playground for anyone who's hungry for more.
I can see the appeal, for sure. But there's got to be a downside, right? No place is perfect. What do they say about the challenges of city life?
Oh, they definitely didn't sugarcoat it. Right away, they talked about the crowds, the noise, the pollution, those things that can really wear you down after a while.
Yeah, that's the side of city living that doesn't always make it into the travel brochures, is it?
Not really, and it's not just about the air quality or the noise levels. They also talked about that sense of, well, almost feeling lost in the crowd. Like, even though you're surrounded by people, it can be kind of lonely.
It's that paradox of city life, isn't it? So many people, yet you can feel invisible.
It really is. And it makes you wonder, are we trading a sense of community for the pursuit of opportunity when we choose the city? Is that part of the deal?
That's such a good question. I'm not sure I have an answer, but it's definitely something to think about.
Me neither. It's like we're suddenly getting into some really deep philosophical territory here.
We are. But I think it's important to consider both sides. What are your initial thoughts, by the way? Where do you lean on this village versus city debate?
Ugh, honestly, it's so tough. Part of me longs for that village tranquility, just being surrounded by nature and friendly faces. But then the other part of me craves that city buzz, all the excitement and diversity. What about you?
I think for me, it's not about choosing a side. It's about appreciating the beauty of both.
Ooh, okay, I like that.
Like maybe it's not village versus city, but more like how can we find a way to experience the best of both worlds?
Finding that balance, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one thing that our speakers in the video really hit on is that personal preference is everything.
Oh, that's so true. There's no right or wrong answer here. It all comes down to what matters most to you.
Exactly. And once you figure that out,
Yeah.
then you can start thinking about which environment might best support your unique needs and aspirations.
I love that. So it's less about choosing a location and more about designing a lifestyle, right?
Exactly. And I think that's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive. Because once we understand these core differences, the next question is, how do we actually choose what's right for us?
Oh, I am ready to dig into that. Let's do it. All right, so we've got our village, peaceful and close-knit, and our city buzzing with opportunity. But like you said, it's not about picking a team, right?
Nope, not at all. And this is where things get really interesting, I think, because the speakers in that video, they touched on this idea of balance. But I think we can take it even further.
Oh, I am all about going deeper. So give it to me. What does balance between these two worlds even look like?
Let's be real. Most of us aren't living in some fairy tale village or, a concrete jungle straight out of Blade Runner. It's somewhere in between.
Yeah, totally. Life is messy. It's not black and white.
Exactly. So finding that balance, it's not about just picking a spot on the map. It's more about how we design our lives.
Okay, so like, what does that even mean?
Think about it. We can love that city energy, but still create those peaceful moments. Urban gardens, quiet cafes, even just making time for a walk in the park.
Oh, you know what that reminds me of? Have you ever heard of biophilic design?
Bio what now?
Biophilic design. It's this whole thing in architecture about bringing nature into city spaces, like buildings with plants growing on the walls, rooftop gardens, even just making sure there's a ton of natural light.
Huh. That's pretty cool. So it's like even when you're in the city, you're still getting those nature vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And it can go the other way too, right? Like imagine a village that sets up a co-working space with super fast internet.
Ah, that's smart. So people who want to live that village life, but still, work remotely and be part of the global economy, they could do that.
Right. So it's not just about our needs, it's about how communities can actually adapt and evolve.
There's a whole field of study called urban-rural interdependence. It looks at how cities and villages depend on each other.
Wait, really? So it's like a legit academic
Oh,
thing.
yeah. They look at everything, food production, tourism, even cultural exchange.
Whoa, okay. So you're telling me those weekend trips I take to the countryside, those are actually part of some bigger system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about it. You're supporting the local economy, experiencing a different way of life, and probably coming back to the city feeling all refreshed.
Okay, that is blowing my mind a little. It's like those nature documentaries where they zoom out and suddenly you see how it's all connected.
Perfect analogy.
Hmm.
And I think that's a key takeaway here. It's not just about where we sleep at night. It's about realizing we're all part of this dance between urban and rural life.
That makes a lot of sense, but I'm not gonna lie, it makes things a bit more complicated too, right? Because
Yeah.
now we're not just thinking about what we want, but also how our choices affect everything else.
You got it. And that's where personal preference comes back in. Because even though these systems are complicated, what we choose does matter.
So how do we even begin to figure this out? How do we know what's right for us and, be responsible at the same time?
Our English language learners had a good point. Self-awareness is key. Really understanding what we need to thrive and how those needs can be met in different ways.
Okay, so like if I know I need nature to feel good, maybe I choose a city apartment with a balcony garden or something.
Exactly. Or maybe you realize you really need that village community vibe, so you find ways to build that in your city neighborhood.
I'm getting it. It's about being intentional, making choices that match our values.
And here's the cool part. As we get better at taking care of ourselves, we're probably going to make choices that are better for everyone else too.
It's like they say, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. Which brings us back to that idea of balance, not just between village and city, but like within ourselves, our communities, even the planet.
Okay, so much good stuff here. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts from you?
It's amazing that this whole conversation came from a simple English lesson. It just shows you the power of being curious, of being open to learning from anywhere.
It really does. Okay, Before we let our listener go, I know you have one more brain tickler for them to chew on. What's that final question you wanted to leave them with?
Well, our speakers focused on the practical stuff, but there's this deeper layer here. And it's a question I think we all need to ask ourselves. Where do you feel most alive?
Oh, wow. Okay, that one hit me right in the heart.
It's powerful, isn't it? And it goes way beyond just, physical location.
Yeah, it's about those moments when you feel, I don't know, most connected to everything.
Beautifully put. And I think that's a great place to leave our listener.
Thinking about where I feel most alive, that really makes you think, huh.
It does, doesn't it? And I think that's the beauty of it. It takes us beyond those checklists of pros and cons and gets to the heart of what truly matters.
Right, because if we can figure out what makes us feel most alive, maybe that's the key to this whole village versus city puzzle.
It might be. It's like we've been approaching this as a geography problem when it's really more of a soul-searching journey.
So instead of just picking a spot on the map, we should be trying to create a life that, well, that brings us those feelings of aliveness, no matter where we are.
Exactly. And that could look totally different for each of us. I mean, for some people, it might be standing on top of a mountain, feeling like they're on top of the world.
Yeah, yeah. Or like feeling the sand between your toes on some secluded beach. Just you and the ocean.
Right. But for someone else, it might be that feeling of, I don't know, creative energy when they're in a recording studio,
Yeah.
laying down a track, surrounded by all that technology.
Or even just like that simple joy of sharing a meal with family, laughing, telling stories, being together. It doesn't have to be some big adventure, right?
Not at all. The important thing is that it makes you feel present, engaged, like you're really living.
That's so reassuring because it means we're not trapped by our circumstances,
Yeah.
right? We can create those moments no matter where we are.
I think so. And maybe that's the biggest lesson from all of this. It's not about village versus city. It's about embracing the fact that we're all different, finding what lights us up, and making sure our lives have space for that.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty beautiful way to wrap this up. Who knew an English learning video would take us on such a journey?
Uh-huh. You never know where these deep dives will lead, do you?
That's for sure. Well, to our listener, we hope this has got you thinking about your own definition of feeling alive. Maybe it's time to revisit a place that holds special meaning for you, or explore somewhere completely new. Or maybe it's just about appreciating the beauty of right where you are. Whatever you do, keep those deep dives going.
Stay curious,